to the newcomer, it's so cheesy and we say it all the time, but keep coming back. Or better yet, just stay. Just to give hope to people out there who might be struggling with this. Our breakup was so beautiful. There was no anger, there was no resentment. We sat and ate dinner together the night before I left and prayed and thanked God for the time that we got to spend together. Who is this person? This would have never happened to me before. And it's all a result of working the steps and helping others, being a part of AA, participating in recovery.
Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast. This is the podcast where we share inspiration, stories of experience, strength, and hope through interviews with members of the recovery community, and that was the voice of Maureen A. I met Maureen in an online meeting out of the Philadelphia area. She shared with such passion and with such a great message that I asked her to appear on the podcast, and she agreed. Here we are. Today is January 18th, and Maureen answers the question, would a drink help? I hope you enjoy the episode. Maureen A. from Philadelphia, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
That's great to have you on the show. Would you start us off by reading the daily reflection for today?
Yes. January 18th. Would a drink help? By going back in our own drinking histories, we could show that years before we realized it, we were out of control, that our drinking even then was no mere habit, that it was indeed the beginning of a fatal progression. From the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 23. When I was still drinking, I couldn't respond to any of life's situations the way other, more healthy people could. The smallest incident triggered a state of mind that believed I had to have a drink to numb my feelings. But the numbing did not improve the situation, so I sought further escape in the bottle. Today, I must be aware of my alcoholism. I cannot afford to believe that I have gained control of my drinking. Or again, I will think I have gained control of my life. Such a feeling of control is fatal to my recovery.
Would a drink help? What does this mean to you? And tell me, was this daily reflection picked for you, or did you pick it yourself?
Well, when I see the title, would a drink help? My reaction is no, period. But that's the short answer to the question. And when I found out about this podcast and I went to go sign up, the first available date was January 18th. So I opened that one up and I saw this title, and this is a question that we all ask ourselves in sobriety. Would a drink help, especially in early sobriety? For me in the beginning, I think this is a pretty common experience, but I got worse when I stopped drinking. And some people say, I've heard people share like, oh, things get better if I just don't drink. And I do not agree with that. That is the opposite of my experience. In my experience, when I put the drink down, my life got so much more unmanageable. And in hindsight, I realized, I was dealing with me for the first time in 10 or 15 years. So, it was not fun. Early sobriety was not fun, but it was absolutely necessary. And for me, coming into the rooms, I was deathly afraid of women. I did not want to go up to another woman and say, I'm new, I need help, can I have your number? I was not going to do that. So I came in, I sat in the back, I got there at 8:01, I left there at 8:59, so nobody can talk to me. I didn't pick up a white chip. I didn't tell anybody my name. And I reached an emotional bottom in those first 60 days that drugs and alcohol could not take me to, because it was just me and Maureen for the first time in a long time. So I'm grateful. I think that I'm grateful because I was so desperate to stop drinking that in those 60 days, there was some sort of surrender that was happening where I didn't pick up a drink, which is a miracle. But I believe that if I had not eventually gotten a sponsor and worked the steps, obviously I would have drank again.
How long did it take you really to to get sober?
Well, I got sober when I was 24, which I know is young. I have a big Irish Catholic alcoholic family, and growing up, I truly believed that every family was like my family because you are attracted to people like you, right? So the people that I hung out with and the people that I was drawn to like had very similar backgrounds as me. And I truly cannot remember a family that I associated with as a kid who did not drink like my family. So it was very foreign to me that there were these people who just didn't drink or who just drank a little bit. Like that was so earth shattering to me when I figured that out. So I graduated from college here in Philadelphia and I did a geographic relocation to Nashville, Tennessee. And if you've ever been to Nashville, then you know that it is a great place to party. And I had a really interesting 2 years living there. And then this crazy thing happened to me where I was following my favorite band, Fish, around the country, selling these shirts that I made. And I met these two guys who were selling posters who were sober. And I started walking around with them. We were chatting. They were like, "Do you want to trade a poster for a shirt?" And I was like, "No, but like I'll still walk around with you." And when the show came, when we were at the show, these guys were dancing like I have never seen anybody dance before. They were having the best time of their life. And my brain could not compute that they were not using drugs and alcohol. Um, So I was so drawn to that. Like attraction, not promotion, is a real thing. And I saw it in person and I started following these guys around. They lived in Greenville, South Carolina, and I would go and visit them. Eventually I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, which was just an hour away. And I was coming to hang out with them and I would go and see them speak at these AA meetings and I would be like, "Oh, I'm just a friend of recovery." uh, Sitting in these meetings and I would hear things in these meetings that I could so relate to. Like it was like getting hit with a bus the first time I realized like, oh no, like I belong here. And that was a year before I got sober. So it took me a while to get to the place where I was ready. And what started happening in those months before I got sober is the people in my life started getting farther and farther away, including these sober people that I really, really admired. And I just saw that my relationships were so empty. And I am like such a people person. This is why I love AA because I go to a meeting and I get to meet all these people. Like that's one of the reasons that I love AA so much. And these people in my life were getting farther and farther out from me. And I had so many sobriety dates that I was like, this is the day. This is the day. And I don't know what happened on August 1st, 2016, but that was the day. And it's so funny because now we're online, right? We're on these Zoom meetings and we're on these phone call meetings. And the first meeting that I went to was a phone meeting because I was so mortified to go into an actual room of AA and say that I was an alcoholic. So I called in to this phone meeting. And I remember it drove me crazy because everybody would unmute to say the prayer. Some meetings do this now on Zoom and on the phone, and it's like, "God grant me the God grant me the God grant me the serenity." It's a mess. And I remember that bothered me so much, but that was the first time I ever said that I was an alcoholic, was on the phone. So 3 or so weeks went by after that, and I was going to another fellowship at the time for families and friends of alcoholics. And I got to this meeting and there was nobody there. So I was like, why don't I look up AA meetings and see if there's one around here? And there was one a block away at a church. And I went to that meeting and I sat in the back, and I was surrounded by these halfway house guys, and they were like, "Here, you can sit with us. You can sit with us." And I was terrified. And I heard a guy tell his story, and I just knew that I was in the right place. Um, of course, it took me a while to talk to anybody, but that's how I came to AA. And it was a really, really slow burn at first, but things changed once I found a sponsor and started working the steps.
How long did it take you to find a sponsor?
Well, this is another crazy story that I love telling. That same band that I am obsessed with, that I followed around the country, when I had 25 days sober, which just was just a brilliant idea on my part, I decided to go to a music festival, and that band was headlining. And this band happens to have like a sober following that calls themselves the Fellowship, and they have meetings at set break during the show. And at this festival, they had meetings throughout the day. So I was going to these meetings 4 times a day at this music festival. And I went to a women's meeting that was happening. And I shared that I was from Asheville. And a woman came up to me and she said, "My name's Julia, and I live in Asheville. Can I take you to a meeting on Monday?" And she did. And that meeting became my home group. It's called At Wits End. It's in Asheville, North Carolina at 8 o'clock on Mondays. And I needed Julia so bad. And God put her in front of me. And I didn't even meet her at an AA meeting. Like, it's so mind boggling to me that that sequence of events happened. And I found this woman who I could relate to so much, who I admired. And finally, I just broke down and asked her to sponsor me. And it was exactly what I needed.
What was that like, asking her to be your sponsor? Was that difficult?
Oh, it was so difficult. I am a super prideful person. That's one of my big step 6 things is pride. And, up until this point, I had never asked for help in I don't know how long. Um, in high school, I would never ask my teachers for help. I would just figure it out. Um, I went to college for music, which I was born, I've been blessed to be born with a talent that I didn't have to try that hard to be good at. So I never had to really put myself out there and be like, "Hey, I'm struggling. I need help," which is actually a huge disadvantage when you're coming to AA and you're convinced that you can fix everything yourself. So I remember standing in the meeting. We were standing up. We were all holding hands and saying the Serenity Prayer. And there was just this loud voice in my head, and it said, "Ask Julia, ask Julia." And she was standing right next to me. And as soon as we all dropped hands after the prayer, I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, "Will you sponsor me?" And she went, "Of course." I'm in my mind, I'm like, she's gonna say no. She's gonna say she can't have a sponsee right now. She was like, "Of course." It was the hardest thing I ever did, and it was the best thing I ever did.
And what's your program look like today?
Oh man. So I'm in the middle of this big shift in my life. This is why this daily reflection stuck out to me so much. I was in a relationship with another member of AA. We were engaged and we were living in a place that I didn't like, and he didn't want to leave. And there were some other factors in there too, but that relationship ended, and I decided to move back to Philadelphia very recently, 2 weeks ago. So my program right now is, I would say, in that desperate place of pain where we have no choice but to turn to God. And it's not because I want to drink. I don't want to drink, which is a miracle of this program. The obsession to drink has been removed as a result of working the steps. But, I'm in pain a lot of the time. And as a result, I am forced to pick up the phone. And I'm in this new place and everything is on Zoom and it's all new. And for the first time really in my recovery, like I actually am calling women who just give me their phone number in a Zoom chat because I have to,
Yeah.
because I have to get connected here. Before when I got sober in Asheville, people would say, "Hey, we're going bowling. Do you want to come?" And it's like, "Yeah." And then I would meet people and then I would call them. I never picked up a phone list and was like, "I'm going to go down the line and call these women." And now I have to do that. And it's actually the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I'm digesting all of this huge change and all of this growth and, in the muck of it, really. And the hand of AA is there for me. So I've just been going to a lot of meetings, kind of trying to check out which meetings I really, really like. I've just gotten a service commitment in a home group, and I've gotten involved with the Philly Young People's Committee. So, my program is the greatest thing in my life, and it gives me a lot of hope every day.
Yeah, I've found the same, and it's like there's limitless service opportunities and limitless meetings in the Philadelphia area. There are over 7,500 meetings every single week, and a majority of those have transitioned to Zoom during the pandemic. Do you keep up with Fellowship, PH Fellowship?
Well, unfortunately, there have been no concerts in over a year.
Well, I have good news. I have good news. So, a good friend of mine from AA here in Philadelphia, Ben, just turned me on to the Fellowship online meetings. So, I'll share those with you after we finish.
Yes,
They,
I would
they
love
meet
that.
they meet weekly on
Oh, I would
Fuji.
love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. How do you feel about online meetings?
Well, when the pandemic started, I was really excited about online meetings because I was not living in Asheville anymore and I really, really missed the recovery in Asheville. So I was able to kind of transport myself back there and go to all my old meetings and see all my old friends. And where I was living on the Outer Banks, there was very few young people, but there was 5 or 6 of us, and we decided to start a young people's meeting there. And man, having that as a service commitment, like meeting with these other people, coming up with a name, coming up with a format, and launching this meeting on Zoom was incredible service work. I mean, we were so plugged in because we had to go to all the meetings and say, "Hey, there's a new meeting starting. Everybody come check it out." And I mean, it just gave us such a sense of purpose. And this was when the lockdown started, so nobody had anything to do. Everybody was unemployed, everybody was bored. It was new. We didn't know what we were doing. And it was such a fulfilling service commitment. Um, there have been periods of time for me in the pandemic where I just can't focus on an online meeting, but I realize that, God's will is what is. Whatever is happening is God's will. And I have to adapt. And I think AA has done such an incredible job of adapting. So, when I get in that mindset of like, oh, I can't do Zoom meetings, like that is my will. That's me making justifications and rationalizations to not participate in this program that literally gave me my life. And I don't have room for that. So I have a system. I have to put my phone away. I have to sit in a comfortable place and I have to look at the screen and not pull up the New York Times crossword puzzle and listen. And, I'm really proud of AA in the pandemic and how well we have adapted.
Me too. So, my home group, we've transitioned to 100% online, and I started a training course for what we affectionately refer to as Sherpa. These are people
Mm.
that carry the technology torch for the meeting, and we run those every other Wednesday. And it's been such a joy to give people the gift of technology and teach them how to run a Zoom meeting. I'd love to have you join if you're if you're at all interested.
Yes, I love Sherpa-ing. I was doing that for one of my old home groups. It's very nice, especially a big meeting, with 60 people. Somebody's going to get unmuted by accident. Somebody's dog is going to be lapping up water, and we're going to hear it. I think it's really important to have somebody doing that.
So, what advice do you have for the newcomer? Maybe somebody getting sober in this pandemic?
Well, I just want to say if you're getting sober in this pandemic, I'm giving you the biggest virtual hug that I can give you. That is extremely courageous, and give yourself some credit. Um, I certainly am not one to give myself credit for anything, right? Because my ego can be so upside down that I'm like, I'm the worst person ever. But it is getting sober is hard. It doesn't say in the big book, we got sober and everything got easier. And, to the newcomer, it's so cheesy and we say it all the time, but keep coming back. Or better yet, just stay. Because the answer is in this program. The answer is in this book. It's in sponsorship. I do think that desperation is what gave me the motivation to get sober. One of my favorite lines in the big book is, then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. And I feel like if I hadn't felt that way, I would have justified and rationalized my way out of AA. But I knew that this stuff worked because I saw those guys dancing at that concert. That gave me so much hope for the future, being sober, seeing them. So, my biggest thing that I tell newcomers is get a sponsor, work the steps, have a spiritual experience, and the obsession to drink will be removed. I've lived in places where people say just don't drink and go to meetings. That is not my experience. To me, that does not work. I'm an alcoholic. Eventually, the drink will win if I don't have a spiritual experience. I will lose. It's not about me wanting to not drink. I have wanted to not drink for years. One of the things in this daily reflection, it said we could show that years before we realized we were out of control, that our drinking even then was no mere habit, that it was indeed the beginning of a fatal progression. I have known that I was an alcoholic for a long time. I just never said it out loud to anybody else because I wanted to make sure that I was an alcoholic and that I couldn't stop. And man, the gift of desperation is real. So if you're in a desperate place, hang on, call somebody, or better yet, give them your number and maybe they'll call you. I didn't want to call anybody. When somebody calls me, it's like always exactly what I need in that moment. Get plugged in. It does get better.
That's a great message. So those people dancing at the concert, they set an example. They were the big book personified. How do you set an example today?
I think the most important way for me to set an example is to really show up and to really live this program. It's easy to give things lip service. It's easy to regurgitate the big book very eloquently. But for me, I do have to practice these principles in all my affairs. This transition that I've been in for the past month or so with the ending of this relationship is exactly what it means to practice these principles in all my affairs. My former fiance is also a member of AA, and luckily for me and for him, he has an amazing program. And just to give hope to people out there who might be struggling with this, our breakup was so beautiful. There was no anger, there was no resentment. We sat and ate dinner together the night before I left and prayed and thanked God for the time that we got to spend together. Who is this person? This would have never happened to me before. That would have never happened in a million years. There would have been doors slamming, things would have been broken, I would have stormed out, I would have burned stuff. There would have been stuff on the lawn that I had thrown out the window, craziness. And it was not that. Like it was this program. God was in that room. And it's all a result of working the steps and helping others, being a part of AA, participating in recovery. I have to participate in my recovery. I can't get a bunch of stuff back and then I'm good. I'm gonna go back to money, property, and prestige now. It doesn't work like that. I have to live it.
Powerful message. It's going to help a lot of people. Anything else you want to tell folks before we wrap up?
Yes. I know we read the 9 step promises a lot in meetings, and I love the 9 step promises, but for me, the big, big, big promise is in the 10th step promises. Let me say that again. For me, the most important promise is in the 10th step promises, where it says, "We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, blah, blah, blah. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition." So when I see this daily reflection, would a drink help? A drink is not even on the table. It's been removed as a result of working the steps. That is possible for anyone who comes into this program. We read how it works almost every meeting, right? And for me, sometimes I just tune it out and I don't even hear it anymore. But recently I realized it says, "If you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Only then can I have this spiritual experience. Do I want what you guys have in AA? Yes, I saw that when I saw the guys dancing at the concert. I wanted that. I wanted to be happy, joyous, and free. But am I willing to go to any length? Am I willing to get uncomfortable? Am I willing to be in pain? Life is painful. Life is not always pleasant. And that's okay. We can do hard things, especially when we walk with God and with the people in AA. So I just wanted to be heard. Like, we can cease fighting everything and anyone. And we can be happy, joyous, and free. And even in pain, which I have been in lately, like, I am still free. And I would so much rather be uncomfortable and free than to be a slave to alcohol.
Maureen, I want to thank you for spending time with me and sharing your experience, strength, and hope.
Thank you so much. I so enjoyed being here, and thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome, and we'll have to have you back.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks to all the listeners and all the supporters. Really appreciate your support. If you want to join us online, we've got a Facebook group. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. If you'd like to support us in our mission, a great way to do that would be to provide a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast network you're listening to us on. That'll help us expand our reach. You can read more about recovery and about the podcast on our website at blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. And if you want to support the podcast, we've got a Patreon. That's at patreon.com/dailyreflection. We also have a PayPal, paypal.me/dailyreflection. We use any and all donations to pay for some of the technology that we use to produce the podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.